Good morning. Welcome back. This is your host, Kristi Slaughter, on SuperTalk Saturday Mornings, WFHG. I'm joined with my special guest, Steve Nice. Good morning, Steve.
Hey, good morning, Kristi.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Happy New Year.
Oh, and to you too. Thank you.
Steve, I got to meet you a few years ago. I think it was at the Great Winter Soup Cook-Off. I'm not sure if you remember that or not, but we were talking a little bit about gluten, and you mentioned lectins. And at the time, it planted a seed, and then I didn't think much about it. And then recently, there's been more and more information being released about lectins, and I had shared with you that I've been working with reducing those in my diet over the last few weeks, and have had tremendous results already. So I'm excited about what this is going to look like. But we've heard about gluten a lot over probably the last decade, but lectins are just something now that we're starting to pay attention to and is getting more publicity and notoriety. What are lectins, and what is gluten, and how does this affect our body, our gut, and our overall immunity?
Well, first, let me explain that I am not a scientist, and my understanding of gluten and lectins has come from my own challenges with gluten sensitivity. And, of course, you probably had my wife on the show, and Sheridan Nice, and she's the owner and the chef at Mona Lisa's Gelato and Cafe in Johnson City. And when we started out 8.5 years ago, we had people coming in asking us if we had gluten-free fare. And personally, I kind of thought the whole gluten-free thing was a fad. And I have to admit that I had contempt prior to investigation, and I'm guilty. But I also started to notice that I was having some challenges when I ate bread and pasta. And so I thought, well, maybe there is something to this. And it seemed like it was getting worse as time went on. I would experience bloating and indigestion and just things that I really couldn't put my finger on what the cause might be. So a guy came through the door with his kid in a rocker, and he looked like an interesting guy. His name is Dr. Eric Oley. And I just posed to him, I said, what do you do? And he said, well, I'm a biochemist. And we struck up a conversation about gluten. And one thing led to the next, and we started meeting regularly. And he had a wealth of information about lectins, which I had never heard of. And so he started explaining to me that lectins are in about 40% of the foods we eat. And they're in, of course, wheat. And it's the lectin itself is called wheat germ agglutinin. And it's really not necessarily associated with gluten, which is part of a couple of proteins in wheat. It's gluten and gliadin. But he explained that lectins are anti-nutrient proteins that are the natural defense mechanism that plants use to battle off predators and anyone that might eat them, including fungus and any other type creature that might choose to eat them. And the lectins, what they do is they bind to what are called epithelial cells in the lining of the gut. So from really the start of the digestive tract all the way through to the end, you've got these epithelial cells. And when we eat lectins, they bind to these cells, and they can start to damage the cells. There's been a lot of talk recently about leaky gut syndrome, and there really hasn't been a whole lot of understanding about what causes that. But recently, there has been a correlation drawn to gliadin in wheat and lectins. So lectins are found in about 40% of the foods we eat, including legumes, nightshade vegetables, potatoes, tomatoes. And so the lectins, and soy. And so these lectins are more or less concentrated, and if we're genetically predisposed to have a reaction to lectins. These can attach to our gut epithelia and start to cause damage. When this damage occurs, our immune system mounts a response. And so there's now another correlation being drawn between lectins and autoimmune disorders. And it's an ongoing research field that is actually called Lectin Ology. And it's really something that's just started back in the 60s at the University of Michigan. So it's not a very old science, and most doctors I've spoken to aren't very familiar with lectins and the effect that those have as they're naturally found in the foods that we eat. So what we did was we met with Eric over a period of about 6 months, and he suggested that a dietary supplement could be created to offset the effect of lectins. So I found this very interesting, but not being a scientist, a lot of what he was explaining to me was over my head. And so I had to do a little background reading, and one thing led to the next, and I built a foundation, I guess, so I could be somewhat conversant. And I went to the folks at the Innovation Lab at ETSU, and I met the director, Dr. Audrey DePelto, and she said that ETSU had a nutritional biochemist by the name of Dr. Andy Clark and a dissolution chemist at the Gatton School of Pharmacy named Dr. Charles Collins, who would be willing to meet with me and explore the possibility of creating a dietary supplement that could help deal with the effects of gluten and lectins. So it's kind of complicated, and I'm sure that a lot of the listeners probably have their eyes glazing over or going to make a second pot of coffee right now. But I can say that these folks really know what they're talking about and know what they're doing. And over the course of a couple of years, there were several iterations of this dietary supplement that were created and tested by Dr. Collins at the Gatton School of Pharmacy. And we finally had a product that I could take and Sheridan could take, and we started handing it out to friends to try. And several of the ingredients in GlutenShiled, which is the name of the product, turned out to work as well as we had anticipated and well as we had hoped for. So anybody who's interested in learning more about GlutenShiled can go to our website at shieldnutra.com. That's ShieldNutra.com. And we have a tremendous amount of research on that website that we have compiled. And not research you see in trade publications or holistic health publications, but these are from scientific journals and accredited institutions that deal with examining research and making sure that the research was peer-reviewed and that it's something that other scientists can rely on. So it's a great tool if you want to learn more about the effect of lectins and also learn more about leaky gut. And finally, the topic of gluten sensitivity and even celiac disease is something that I don't think is going to go away. And one of the reasons for that is science and technology have learned that lectins are actually nature's defense against predators. And so they've learned how to concentrate lectins in things like wheat. And so the unintended consequence of that is that we were probably, most of us, brought up eating all kinds of whole grains and things that contained lectins, but when it was learned that this was a natural, a natural way to combat pests and it basically became a concentrated pesticide that was used by science. And so suddenly you see the rise of gluten sensitivity. And I feel like this is an unintended consequence that has occurred because scientists have been searching for a way to use more natural forms of defense against predators when growing crops like wheat, not realizing that the lectins themselves are something that our immune system is going to react very negatively to. So that was a lot, and I'm not sure how much of that is interesting, but it is interesting to me because I take GlutenShiled every day now, and it has helped me tremendously. And we've been selling it through Amazon and through our website and here at the Natural Foods Market in Johnson City. And they sold over 500 bottles of it last year. And a lot of those folks are repeat customers, and they're finding a tremendous amount of relief from the ingredients that we have in GlutenShiled that are designed to combat the effects of wheat, gluten, and gliadin, and, of course, lectins.
Steve, we need to take a quick commercial break, but I've got a couple questions. Could you stay with us?
Sure.
Okay, we'll be back here in just a moment. This is your host, Kristi Slaughter, on SuperTalk Saturday Mornings, WFHG 92.9. Welcome back. This is your host, Kristi Slaughter, on SuperTalk Saturday Mornings, WFHG 92.9. We're back with my special guest, Steve Nice. We are talking about lectin, glutens, and this product, GlutenShiled. Steve, I had shared before we had you on the show today that I've been doing some reducing naturally of lectins in my diet. And I can tell you I've been strictly gluten-free for 14 years, and thinking about reducing lectins and going through that process and looking at the foods that contain the most lectins, the skins of certain nightshade vegetables like peppers and tomatoes and their seeds, it really encompasses a lot of the foods that most of us are eating in our diets on a regular basis. And so I was looking for a product that I could have in times that I'm dining out or I'm going to a friend's house to eat, or just those small amount of lectins that even if we do everything that we can, those still are going to come through. So I'm thankful that you all decided to do this and that everything worked to collaborate. I've never tried it before. I'm anxious to do that and to see how it works. So what are some of the things that people have noticed once they've started the product and started reducing these types of things in their diet? What are some of the benefits that they've noticed?
Well, I stopped getting indigestion after I ate, and I also stopped bloating and having problems with gas. So those were really big deals for me. But also, we have enzymes to break down food into little tiny parts, and something called dipeptylpeptidase 4, which is an enzyme that breaks down gluten specifically. But also, GlutenShiled has probiotics. So a lot of folks don't really equate gut health with probiotics, but you've seen the rise in popularity of probiotics, and a lot of people are discovering that the gut has a whole climate in and of itself, a whole world of bacteria, some of it good, some of it bad. But if the bad bacteria starts outweighing the good bacteria, then we can experience other kinds of problems. So without going into any specifics about that, I will say that the ingredients in GlutenShiled were very carefully designed to not just help with things in our diet, but also to help tune up the gut. And I'm much more regular than I used to be, and I guess that's okay to say that on the air, but it's something that I think a lot of folks, as they get older, they don't make enzymes the way they used to, and we might be oriented toward eating things that can create a bad environment in our gut. So the probiotics in our formula are really very helpful.
Steve, thank you for sharing your personal journey and the things that you've noticed. I was amazed. Within probably 2 or 3 days, I could already start feeling the changes in my body, watching the lectins. And here, like I said, I've been gluten-free for 14 years. And when I first went gluten-free, it was such a positive, life-changing experience. And then here, all this time later, now I'm examining these lectins and how I'm getting them in other sources other than wheat. I had more energy. I'm sleeping better. My emotions and moods are more stable. The fluid, the water that's come off of my body, within a couple days, I was able to get into clothes that I haven't worn in a year. It was amazing, incredible, the difference that this has made. And so I'm really anxious to try GlutenShield and see what comes from that. And I think this is a lot of the issues that we're dealing with, deal with gut health and start with gut health. And so many people are having issues with autoimmune disorders and autoimmune diseases, which oftentimes I think now the doctors are linking back to the original digestive health itself.
Absolutely. And I would say, too, that this is a nutrition adventure. And, you know, our body's a machine. So the more we learn about our machine, the more we learn about digestion, the more we start thinking about the effects of the foods we eat on how we feel and how our body works, the better we're going to be able to take advantage of that knowledge. And it's something that, you know, if you just start small, maybe try a probiotic, maybe try GlutenShield, before you eat, maybe try some before you go to bed at night and see what it does for your regularity and just your general feeling of well-being and the energy level that you have. I think you'll be shocked at how well this works. And then, like me, you'll be curious and want to know, why does it work? And you'll start reading and looking at more articles. And as I say, it's an adventure that's worth taking.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with us, Steve. If you don't mind, could you give us the name of the product again, your web address, and where people can learn more?
Sure. The name of the product is GlutenShield. And if you Google GlutenShield, you'll find that a clinical trial was just performed, and you'll get to read about that. And the website is shieldnutra.com, ShieldNutra.com, and that website has as much information as I think anybody would ever want to learn about it, and then it could also be a springboard to start researching other subjects that relate to lectins and gluten intolerance.
Thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, Steve.
You too. Thanks for having me on, Kristi.
Thank you. Again, we are not medical doctors making medical claims or giving medical advice. This is my personal experience that I've had. Like I said before, I was recommended by a medical doctor to examine my diet and look at the lectins. I had purchased the book, The Plant Paradox, and started investigating and researching online. That's kind of how I did it when I found out that I was gluten intolerant many, many years ago. So this is definitely the next phase for me that I'm very excited about and thankful that I can share with you folks. But again, if you have questions about medical advice, please contact your medical care provider for that information. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back here in just a few minutes. This is your host, Kristi Slaughter, on SuperTalk Saturday Mornings, WFHG 92.9. Welcome back. This is your host, Kristi Slaughter, on SuperTalk Saturday Mornings, WFHG 92.9. Just want to clarify the interview that we just had with Steve Nice. If you are looking for the GlutenShield, it's from a company called Shield Nutraceuticals. The actual web address is www.shieldnutra.com. Again, that's shieldnutra.com. That should take you directly to that site. What we'll do is I will post that information on the SuperTalk Facebook page as well as my personal Kristi Slaughter page so that you can find those links and get some more information. And call me sometime and let me know how it goes, because I haven't tried it, like I said, and I'm interested to see what it's all about, and hopefully it'll work and get some great benefits. It sounds like it is for a lot of people already.